Hello again, and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the critical issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. And we want you to share your opinions and comments with us. Just go to facebook.com/MPB Online News. On Twitter, our handle is @MPB News. Also visit our webpage, mpbonline.org/issue. At issue tonight, the presidential election. With the race for the White House in the home stretch and Election Day just days away, voters will soon decide who will lead our country for the next 4 years. The Democrat, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, or the Republican, billionaire businessman Donald Trump. National polls show the race is tight going into the final weekend before voters cast their ballots on Tuesday. The polls also show Mississippi a solid red state, with Donald Trump leading Hillary Clinton here. Here are the candidates' closing statements from the final presidential debate in Las Vegas on October 19th on why they should be the next president of the United States.
I'm reaching out to all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, because we need everybody to help make our country what it should be, to grow the economy, to make it fairer, to make it work for everyone. We need your talents, your skills, your commitment, your energy, your ambition. You know, I've been privileged to see the presidency up close, and I know the awesome responsibility of protecting our country and the incredible opportunity of working to try to make life better for all of you. I have made the cause of children and families really my life's work. That's what my mission will be in the presidency. I will stand up for families against powerful interests, against corporations. I will do everything that I can to make sure that you have good jobs with rising incomes, that your kids have good educations from preschool through college. I hope you will give me a chance to serve as your president.
She's raising the money from the people she wants to control. It doesn't work that way. But when I started this campaign, I started it very strongly. It's called Make America Great Again. We're going to make America great. We have a depleted military. It has to be helped, has to be fixed. We have the greatest people on earth in our military. We don't take care of our veterans. We take care of illegal immigrants, people that come into the country illegally, better than we take care of our vets. That can't happen. Our policemen and women are disrespected. We need law and order, but we need justice too. Our inner cities are a disaster. You get shot walking to the store. They have no education. They have no jobs. I will do more for African Americans and Latinos than she can ever do in 10 lifetimes. All she's done is talk to the African Americans and to the Latinos. But they get the vote, and then they come back. They say, we'll see you in 4 years. We are going to make America strong again, and we are going to make America great again, and it has to start now. We cannot take 4 more years of Barack Obama, and that's what you get when you get her.
Let's get straight to the point with views from both sides of the aisle right here in Mississippi. Austin Barbour is a Republican national strategist. He's the founding partner of Clearwater Group. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He is an attorney with the Beria Jones Law Firm and a former member of the Mississippi House of Representatives. Gentlemen, good to have you back with us on.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, good to be here.
As we launch into something that has had a lot of people talking for a long time now. Austin, let me start with you. What are your thoughts on the campaign so far?
Well, I mean, listen, I think everybody, it's funny, Brandon, I saw the other day a countdown clock to when the polls open on Election Day. I think many of us are waiting for that countdown clock of when the election is over.
Yes.
It's been a rough year. Tough primaries from the Republican side. Hillary's was pretty easy. Bernie Sanders gave her a good race. But I think most people, most American voters are sort of tired of the nastiness, the negativeness. And I think that's very easy to prove when you look at these two candidates, both the Republican and the Democrat, have the highest unfavorable ratings of any candidates in the history of our country. Well, we should say the history of how long they've been keeping record of polls. So I think most everybody is fatigued with the election and certainly ready for it to be over in just a few short days.
Yeah, what a run. It's been so wild that if we were to be taping this show each week, we could have had just a new fantastic line of discussion, and it would have been completely, phased out by the following week with the next big shoe dropped. And so it's been wild. Austin's right. You have voter fatigue typically by this point in a campaign. I don't know that I ever remember during my time of following these things feeling it so acutely at this point. Folks are frustrated. They're tired. Even the media and the folks covering the race, maybe you can speak to that, seem to be exhausted with it. So it's been a wild time. I did notice that when you were introducing Mr. Trump, you mentioned him as a billionaire. I think we should note we haven't seen his tax return, so we can't be clear about that.
Well, that is true. When you talk about these two candidates, Austin, you mentioned approval ratings. Are we in a situation where we're voting for the less offensive candidate or the one we like best, one we like better?
I don't know that I can give you an exact answer to that, Wilson. And I do want to say this. I mean, there is excitement about Donald Trump. There's no question about that. I mean, everything that comes out that's negative for him, all the Oppo research that the Clinton campaign or friends of the Clinton campaign and the media are able to go unearth and release about Donald Trump, he's still around. He's still fighting. As you said in the very opening, this is as close as the race has been since we've begun the general election. I think the most recent polling that I saw had him at about 45%. Of course, I know we'll talk in a minute. This is not a national election. We deal with an electoral college. But there is excitement for him. There is excitement for Hillary. They've just run totally opposite types of campaigns. With the Trump campaign, they've done much of what he did in the primary election, which is try to take advantage of huge crowds, big rallies. He had a couple of them in Mississippi, one in Madison Central in your neck of the woods, one at the Coliseum, one on the Gulf Coast. Always has these big crowds. He's tried to sort of follow that model. Not so much as setting up your traditional campaign of let's be very organized, let's have a big staff, let's make sure we're registering new voters, getting people to the polls when we go knock on their door, the types of things that most campaigns do. He's sort of all about this buzz, hoping that he'll create a big enough wave that will carry him through Election Day. Whereas the Clinton campaign has been very much more of a traditional button-down campaign, which is what I think is really going to help on Election Day, doing the door-to-door, the phone calls, all the other stuff sort of 21st century technology allows an organized campaign to do. I talked to some people today who had some people they knew in New Hampshire and Pennsylvania who said, you know, I hadn't heard from any Trump campaign volunteers, but Hillary's people have knocked on my door 4 times. These are undecided voter types. So it's just, we're going to see which model works. Trump has put all his eggs in one basket of, dadgummit, I'm going to have 20,000 people at rallies. This is what I like to do. It's my own strategy versus Hillary, who's not going to do these big rock star type rallies, but it's going to run a very organized campaign.
Brendan, do you think that Mississippi is so red a state that no matter what Trump says or does, he will carry the state with no trouble?
I think so at this point. And historically, from this stage moving forward here with 4 days left until the election, we've never seen something cataclysmic enough to swing an election that late. Even those so-called October surprises typically don't mean more than a 2-point swing either way. And so I think in the same way that I think that Secretary Clinton is somewhat bulletproof in terms of her path to the Electoral College, I think Donald Trump has a very safe majority here in Mississippi, and I'd be surprised to see that erode.
Yeah, I mean, look, the results in Mississippi are baked in. Donald Trump's going to win Mississippi. Donald Trump's going to win neighboring states of Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana. We just don't know if he's going to win it by 8 or win it by 15. Those results are baked in, just like Hillary Clinton's going to win all of New England, West Coast, you know, these other type states. It is these states, and I have here on my computer, the Real Clear Politics, which has it just aggregates polling data from across the country. It's not partisan, they're not left. And when you look at the Electoral College, which is what we talked about a second ago, this is what matters. Who can get to 270 electoral votes? It doesn't matter if you get one more vote nationally. What matters is Electoral College. I think in 2000, Al Gore got more votes from a popular standpoint, but George W. Bush, of course, won the Electoral College because he won Florida. That's what matters. These states like, unbelievably, North Carolina, that's a big state. Georgia and Arizona, those are 3 traditionally Republican states. I think if I had to bet today, Trump's probably going to lose North Carolina. I think he holds on to Georgia and Arizona, Florida, Ohio, New Hampshire, Nevada. Pronounced it correctly for anybody watching in Nevada. These are the states that are really going to decide the difference in this election. Those are the ones to really watch on election night. Certainly I'll be watching on election night.
Well, and as we step back to try to figure out how that map may play out, I think we do look for historical markers. And in 2012, a good candidate, Mitt Romney, got 206 electoral votes. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, can Donald Trump get 64 more electoral votes than Mitt Romney? And, to Austin's point from earlier, there was a smart group of Republicans who got together and wrote an autopsy on the Republican Party in 2012, really on the campaign, and said, where are the areas of focus? What do we need to do? And certainly one of those was, women with a college degree and expanding our base among Latinos for the Republican Party. And it's amazing to me, not only did Donald Trump just rip that up and set it on fire, he also eschewed, these things like using a computer to locate where your voters are, direct mail campaigns that are targeted, things like you said about this early voting push and GOTV emphasis. And yet he still has been in the mix in some of these states. Ohio looks like it could go
He's going to
Trump.
win Ohio.
I think he could. And so what that tells me is this really remarkable 2016 season, this angst campaign has really gotten him a lot of mileage.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but he has run a very populist campaign, particularly on trade, that helps him in the Rust Belt, specifically in Ohio. I think he's going to win Ohio. Bush didn't win Ohio. Romney did not win Ohio. McCain did not win Ohio. Bush didn't win Ohio in 2000 and 2004, if I'm correct there. But he's run that kind of message and that kind of campaign directly to Ohio. But it doesn't translate into Florida. It doesn't translate into North Carolina and Nevada. And they've said, look, man, we're going to run our own race. We're not going to listen to consultants from the past, from the establishment, from these people and that people. And look, it proved them very well. They were very successful in the primary, but they're the underdog right now. People that are watching at home right now, Donald Trump is the underdog going into Election Day. That does not mean he won't win. Polling data is wrong. I worked on Romney's 2012 campaign, and I was in Boston going up into election night. We thought the race was closer than it really was. So there's polling data is not always correct. Internal polling data from campaigns is not always right, because you have to model how many black people do we think are going to vote? How many white people do we think are going to vote? How many seniors? How many, 35 and under? You have to go try to model that, and that is very difficult because every 4 years, the presidential turnout is always going to be a little different. Barack Obama is going to drive a totally different turnout than Hillary Clinton does. I promise you, Donald Trump's going to drive a totally different turnout than Mitt Romney did.
Well, if Donald Trump wins, let's be honest, political science is rigged. Everything that we've learned about how to win elections means
Not
nothing.
rigged, but
because
throw it out the window.
Let's just take, for example, when he goes into Florida, what his idea of campaigning in Florida looks like. It looks like a barnstorming tour. It looks like something out of Kingfish in Louisiana. You just go city to city and kind of get increasingly virulent as the day goes on until at night you're just screaming and working the crowd into a lather. Then you leave. Clinton goes into Florida, hundreds of staffers, hundreds of field offices. At the end of the rally, they're telling you where to register to vote. They're telling you where you can vote. They're showing you the process. They're walking you through the process.
Which one of these two do you think is better for Mississippi?
That's hard to say. I think I was looking at it in sort of different lanes there. I think Donald Trump's probably better for Mississippi because you have a Republican majority, 2 Republican senators, a Republican governor, 3 Republican congressmen. They'll obviously have better relationships with the Republican president and be able to get things done in a greater way with a Republican president than a Democrat president. I also think that if Donald Trump wins the race, we've held on to the Senate. We probably gained seats in the Senate, and therefore you'd have Thad Cochran as 2 more years as Republican Appropriations Chairman, Roger Wicker in a greater role, more senior role in the U.S. Senate, And then you've got Governor Phil Bryant, who is, he's been one of the main Republican statewide elected officials from around the country to stay close to Donald Trump throughout this. So in terms of our elected officials and their ability to get things done for Mississippi, I'd have to say, yeah, no question, Donald Trump.
I think you misunderstood the question. That wasn't what is Austin's Christmas wish list. I don't think we're looking at that type of scenario. Donald Trump, as a candidate, is a person who we probably know less about than any major party candidate in terms of his policy positions. And we could complain about whose fault that is, but look at the debates. I don't know if we had any lower education quotient to come out of a series of debates than the three we just witnessed. Donald Trump has successfully talked about things that frankly have no bearing on being the commander-in-chief of the United States. So it's a complete mixed bag. If I were to try to pick out of the air the things he's talked about the most, I don't know. Does building a bigger wall around Mexico help the people in Hattiesburg and Gulfport? I have a hard time drawing that line. Does creating special panels to prosecute his political opponents somehow help Mississippians? I doubt it. Hillary Clinton has spent this campaign talking about child welfare. She's talked about education. She's talked about things like Alzheimer's and various disease prevention and disease exploration. She's talked about how we grow a fair tax code and something that'll help with our small businesses. She's been talking to issues that I think speak to a large swath of Americans. All Trump has is that kind of negativity campaign, that sort of anger campaign. But let's be honest, we know nothing about this guy's policies.
I don't agree with everything Donald Trump says. I don't agree with everything Donald Trump thinks. I don't agree with everything Donald Trump has put out there as his policies. I wish he would have been more transparent on releasing his taxes and these other things. But what I can say with Hillary Clinton is she is a leftist. Okay, she's a leftist in the model and mode of Barack Obama. And I'm not trying to be mean-spirited, I'm not trying to be negative, but that's just her mentality. She will try to force her far-left agenda on Mississippi, whether it's economic issues, trade issues, social issues. That's going to be her mentality if she wins. There are a lot of things we don't know about Donald Trump, but in terms of answering your question of who will be better for Mississippi, I think that if Donald Trump is president, we've got a Republican Senate, we've got a Republican House, we've got a Republican governor in Mississippi. I'm still interested to sort of feel him out on how he'll handle certain foreign policy issues. I think there are probably farmers in the Mississippi Delta who were worried about trade issues with Donald Trump. But that's sort of my answer to this.
I just want real quick, it's been kind of remarkable to watch the movement of the country over the 16 years when you watch these various presidential debates. I think that there was probably a time as late as 2000 where if we were having this discussion in the swing states, those folks might say, that leftist thing is a bit of a slur. I'm not so sure we have a right-center country anymore. Yeah. I'm not sure that's what the voting booth looks like.
I agree.
I think it might be more progressive. So I think Republicans, that's part of the reconsideration that Republicans have to do is it enough now to say, I'm the most conservative candidate? Well, it is in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But most everywhere else, it's not anymore.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, look at the results of the last presidential election. Now, look, I do think Barack Obama is sort of a once-in-a-generation type politician. And
Y'all better hope so.
Yeah, we'll see. Hillary Clinton is certainly not that. But I do agree with sort of your central point there that this is not a sort of right-center, country anymore.
And in 2000, I think it probably was.
Yeah, I agree.
Austin, what do you make about what Trump has said about this election being rigged, in particular if he doesn't win, that the system is rigged against him?
I just think that he shouldn't say that. That's one of the things that I just, firmly disagree with him on. Both of us have been involved with not only running campaigns, but involved with elections in general throughout most of our life, including even our young life. 3,130 or so counties that exist throughout the United States. Mitt Romney won 2,390 of those, okay? That means that a vast majority of the 2,390 counties across the country, a big-time majority, are run by Republicans. County officials and state officials, Delbert Hosemann, and county officials in Mississippi run the elections. The federal government does not come in and run our presidential elections or our primary elections. Of course, parties, Republican, Democrat Party, run primary elections. It's not rigged. There are issues that take place at certain precincts throughout the country. Yes, I've witnessed them myself, but that does not mean that we have a rigged election. Are there issues with the polls? Of course, there are always issues with polls, but poll results that come out, whether it's after the debate saying someone won or lost it, or poll results for Florida or North Carolina, does not equate to having a rigged election. I'm sorry, but I firmly disagree with that statement. The results are not rigged.
It's such an important point. I mean, I'm glad you and others have said that. It's important that we have that discussion. This is kind of what our election system is predicated on, this peaceful transfer of power. This idea that what we've decided to do to determine leadership in our country is to run campaigns, and the leader governs, and ideally, the opposing side gets behind him. I'm struck by that George H.W. Bush letter that he left for Clinton. If people have seen it, it's been all over the internet. That was a bitter campaign. It's fair to say that both men were exhausted and probably highly frustrated with each other before it was all over with. But President Bush did what I think we all do in our best moments. He writes a letter essentially saying to President Clinton, your victories are our country's victories. And I'm pulling for that. Yeah. And I think in the best spirit of our country, that's what we should all be thinking about. That, to me, is what is so dangerous about this rigged argument. If you live in that world, and that's the lens through which you see our system, then it gives you license to discredit almost everything that happens. And if you live in that world, it's hard to see how we do better together.
Well, listen, I think this all, I don't think I know, this goes back to the last debate where Chris Wallace asked, Mr. Trump, would you accept the results if you lose? And he said, well, I got to get back to you. I think the proper response for Mr. Trump would have been to say, listen, I'm going to go through the process. If there are questions that we have about results that come out of Miami-Dade County in Florida, where it's in the balance, or Broward County, or whatever county it is, we're going to go through that process. And if we see, hey, there are legitimate issues that are here and we need to take this to a court, we'll go through that. He really needed to give some detail on that answer, not just, well, hey, I'll get back to you on that answer and hold you in suspense, because the way people take that is he's not going to accept the results, whether he gets 40% of the vote or 49.99% of the vote.
Well, and in fairness, look, Mitt Romney would have hit that question out of the park. John McCain would have hit that question out of the park. There is one guy who would have flubbed that question at the top of it, and he happens to be the Republican
nominee. And I think he would have won that debate. I really do. I think that issue, that headline was on the top of the fold. We don't use that term as much anymore.
We're not folding.
Yeah, top of the fold of every national newspaper across the country the very next day. He doesn't make that statement. And, I think people say, look, Donald Trump won the third debate and he gets some momentum.
Austin, you were well connected to Republicans here and elsewhere. Do you know a lot of Republicans yourself who have decided they are not going to vote for the Republican nominee for president?
I do. I think there are Republicans, and I'm sure there are some Democrats, but probably not as many, that are troubled by some of the things that Donald Trump has said, whether they're in Mississippi or across the country. That question. Things that he said. I mean, you had the video that came out. I mean, those are moral issues that people are troubled with. There are other issues in terms of, the comments that he makes about, Russia and his relationship with Russia. But I think what he's done a good job with here lately is consolidating Republican votes. He was, as everybody likes to look at, polling statistics and crosstabs within polls, and you quickly go, all right, what percentage of Republicans is Donald Trump getting? What percentage of Democrats is Hillary Clinton? She's always in the mid to high 80s, if not 90s. Trump was in the 70s, and that was a death knell for him. But he's been able to, and I think this is why you've seen a rise in these national polls, bounce back into the mid 80s, which is where he needs to be, really, above that.
Yeah, I think that Austin is telling it straight. I have several Republican friends. I wouldn't call myself connected with Republicans in that same way at all. But, I live in Mississippi. A lot of my friends and family are Republicans. And this is just unbelievably different. Again, I keep looking back at these past elections and recalling what I can about the way those played out. And I don't remember a time where we're all sitting around the table in agreement that this particular candidate wouldn't be a good one.
But I will tell you what a lot of Republicans will eventually end up doing is looking across the other side of the table, not you, but seeing Hillary Clinton, seeing Hillary Clinton sitting there and going, I cannot be for this person. I don't trust her. All the issues, whether it's the foundation, and I think the Clinton Foundation gets overlooked. I mean, they are major issues that are there, which is something she'll have to deal with. But from all these other issues that we've talked about ad nauseum. So I think that has been a big saving grace for Donald Trump, is because who he is running against. And in many ways for Hillary Clinton, it's been a saving grace for her that she's running against Donald Trump and not running against a Marco Rubio or somebody like that, who I think would have had an easier general election time. But he didn't win the nomination. Donald Trump won the nomination and won it somewhat easily.
Wednesday morning, newspaper headlines, what is it going to say above the fold?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton's probably going to win. Donald Trump wins Mississippi easy. I mean, she's the favorite. You go to Real Clear Politics. I don't want her to win. I don't want her to be the next president of the United States. But when you go to Real Clear Politics and and you see that they are forecasting her at 263 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 180 or so, and you got 10 or 11 states that are up in the air, all she has to do is win one. That is tough uphill sledding for him.
I agree. I think Clinton wins White House, Democrats take a narrow lead in the Senate, and the Republicans hold on to the House.
Yeah, and I think that I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, we should give a lot of credit to Roger Wicker. Our U.S. Senator has been the chairman of the National Republican Central Committee, has worked he's had a day job and a night job. His day job being U.S. Senator and his night job trying to lead the charge of making sure the Republicans can find a way to hold on to the U.S. Senate. I think the Republicans are going to hold on just slightly. I really do.
Austin Barbour, Brandon Jones, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Good discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
For more information on the presidential election, go to our website, mpbonline.org/issue. We are out of time for now. We hope you will join us again next week for another edition of At Issue. Good night.